Chapter 12, Aiming for Growth with Your Sales Team. The Stretch Target Concept. What would happen to your revenues if you could increase the size of your average customer by 50%? What would happen to your profitability if you could fire your bottom 10% of customers and replace them with the same number of customers that are the size of your top 1% or even much larger? What would the impact be if just 10% of your mid to top level sales producers doubled their production because half of their new customers were now 2, 3, or even 5 times the average customer? I have seen these very results occur with the strategies outlined here. Sales producers and companies in general often get caught in ruts of thinking as to what is possible and what their growth rate or average customer size should be. You, as part of management, must coach your team to focus on the company's greatest results and relationships and how much more they could be in the future. Then you should show them how they can replicate and multiply those same efforts and results in the future to realize much larger relationships. You can make this concept take quantum leaps by showing a team how they can bring on new customers that are many times larger than their current largest customers. Here are the steps. Create top customer lists. Create lists for the company's top 1% and top 20% customers. Do the same for each individual sales producer, selling team, and division. Just as I wrote in Chapter 7 on growth-oriented targeting, it is critical that you ensure that every division and every sales producer is always aware of who are the top customers based on total net profits. Your team needs to have these prioritized lists printed out in front of their eyes for regular review for several reasons. 1, they will give these priority customers more attention and thus will improve retention. 2, they will be better able to profile and qualify what your best types of customers are. 3, they will do a better job of investing more time going after more of these better customers and less time with time-sucking, low-profit customers. Quick tip: recommend your profit-draining customers to the competition. Create top prospect lists. Have every sales producer list out whale targets, or what I call stretch target lists. These will be of prospects that are 2, 3, or even 5 times larger than their largest current clients. There will need to be some balance as far as what is realistic, but what you need to challenge is the status quo and the false paradigms of customer size potential. Usually in our employee interviews, during our customary preparation for engagements, our consultants will have spoken with many of the top customers, salespeople, and managers, and we will have uncovered insights as to what is possible regarding the largest potential relationships on which our client could realistically focus. Usually, a few of the top sales producers are significantly outside the norm and have a larger than average customer profile. These top echelon sales producers have much of the information that you need to help win this higher margin, larger than average value customer. You must become the expert in asking for, listening to, and facilitating these golden insights throughout the company. The question then becomes, what is the appropriate time balance between the mid-sized bread and butter prospects that may or may not have a higher closing ratio and the much larger potential customers? The ratios might be lower with larger customers, but even so, with much larger volume and perhaps margin, the ROI for the time invested could be much higher. I'm shocked at how many businesses have equal or even higher closing ratios with larger customers. But for a variety of reasons, sales and marketing have focused on smaller accounts. The bottom line is you must regularly discern the right balance and push the envelope toward growing average client size and deal size to its optimal level by getting every sales producer to consistently put the right amount of effort toward a much larger customer size and percent of customer share. Ask, don't tell, to get more growth. Socratic stretch. As I discussed throughout the book, it is best to get your sales producers and others involved to define what they think is possible after you have presented as much evidence as you can that the bar can be raised. Because people tend to support that which they help to create, you will get more buy-in by getting your team to set the targets rather than you telling them what you think they should be. So Socratically, sell your team. Don't tell the team what the potential may be. Socratically set goals around increasing the following. Number of new stretch target customers. You must make sure your team targets enough larger stretch customers and also that these targets are as large as the sales producers believe that they can possibly be. Each of your sales producers could have varying numbers of stretch target prospects. The right number of stretch targets might be as few as 1 or as many as 40 or hundreds. Your task is to get this number up to the maximum. If you don't, what may happen is that with too few targets, your sales producers may experience failures or roadblocks with the stretch targets listed due to the quantity of the list and not the quality. Average share of existing customers. You can facilitate a separate stretch effort for the purpose of expanding the share of your current customers. Many companies with a maintainer mentality and culture will have a preponderance of sales producers who are only getting a small percentage of the potential from their average customer. You can have an outside third party survey your customers to see what percentage of business is going to other companies, and you can have your sales team ask the question as well. But you must find out what the potential averages are in your market. You may also have a few top sales producers who are clearly proving that a much higher percentage of customer share is a reality. Once you discern the realities, you need to determine just how far that average can be pushed throughout your team and get the team to aim for the maximum. This is an excellent area to facilitate an innovation process and a regular sharing of best practices. Let those succeeding share what is working and keep testing for what methods can most easily be scaled throughout the team, especially with your less experienced sales producers. Average share of new customers. The same type of effort you are doing with existing customers can be done with prospects or new customers. Get your team to also stretch how much they ask for from the new customer in proposals and closing options, as I discussed in Chapter 11. In many customers, the percentage share you have of the customer's total spend for your offerings is also a stretch potential. I have seen so many sales producers and managers become content with having a small percentage of each customer's potential spend, say 10 or 20%. Yet after we've conducted depth interviews with these customers, we would find that many of them were spending 80 or 90% with a single competitor of our client. The competitor wasn't necessarily providing better returns to the customer, but was asking for more of their business. Get sales producers to think in terms of quantum leaps. The same principle of stretch targets can be applied to production throughout the course of a year. You should conduct an analysis with your sales producers regarding how long it took for them to multiply their sales production and/or incomes by a factor of 2, 3, or even 5. Five-fold increases may seem like too much of a leap for you at first, but when you talk with commissioned sales producers, many can recall a time when they were earning 1/5 of what they are currently earning. In industries where there is no cap on commission, and high six-figure incomes are common and seven-figure incomes are not unheard of, it is possible for sales producers to go back and see five-fold increases in their incomes more than once. You need to pick the multiplier that makes sense for your environment and begin a conversation with sales producers about the time it took to increase by that percent. For example, you may show an instance when a beginning rep produced $200,000 in sales and $50,000 in commission to him the first year. 3 years later, he was at $400,000 in sales and more than $100,000 in commission. 2 years after that, he was at $800,000 in sales and $250,000 in commission. He has had a four-fold increase in sales revenue in 6 years. Yet tracking this on an Excel spreadsheet wouldn't have him doubling sales from the $800,000 level until around year 13, and the same for his income. The fact is, for sales producers who are consistently aiming for the highest possible achievements with no psychological restrictions on income, their rate of increase can and often does look like a hockey stick pattern in the first phase of their career. Here is the key question to ask each salesperson. How much sooner could you double your sales this time versus how long it took to double your sales last time? And what is your plan for doing so? The amount of increase may be different. It could be a 50% increase instead of a 100% increase. Regardless, you have got to get sales producers to see the pattern of success they or others have had and how they have, in most cases, accelerated their rate of growth. They are not growing incrementally, but exponentially. They should begin to see how they have in the past and can in the future grow exponentially based on their increased wisdom and future innovations and synergies yet untapped. You should coach them toward the highest potential rate of growth possible. Build sales stretch plans that aim for quantum leaps. I recommend that at least one quarter per year, if not every quarter, sales producers should build an individualized stretch plan. These plans should include the most optimistic targets they can envision hitting in a 3-year, 1-year, and quarterly increment. These plans should include the most optimistic targets they can envision hitting in 3-year, 1-year, and quarterly increments. These targets are not conservative odds are I could hit these type of targets, but if all the stars align, it is possible that I could achieve these levels of production. Again, you must assure everyone that they have total safety if they do not hit these goals, but they need the chance to expand their thinking. The reason that these stretch goals are so valuable isn't that just production may increase. More importantly, stretch targets accelerate the rate of innovation. Thinking about bigger achievements begets thoughts about improvements that must happen to achieve change. These thoughts become much different from the thoughts that are born of quotas like how soon can I stop working. Granted, there must be realism in the targets and plans. That's your job as the facilitator of the process, to keep balance yet exhort toward maximum potentials. How do you get your team to agree to such high goals? In our Stretch 100 sales strategy and innovation programs, which I'll get to in a moment, we get the promise from the sales management and the ownership that the sales team is allowed to fail on their stretch goals, and that the stretch goals, if reached, will not become the new quota. Prep your team with the research you have on the market and the facts you have from internal company information, and show that much higher potentials are possible, even if you aren't aiming to be the best. But this begs the question, can and should your team aim to be the best? The majority of times, significant growth doesn't require a team or individuals to aim to be number one, but only to aim and reach a much higher, already proven potential, which makes all of these strategies all the more realistic and achievable. Set blue sky objectives. Have you ever seen an objective in business or in your personal life accomplished long before you expected it to be accomplished? Have you noticed how many people tend to complete a tremendous amount of their deliverables before a deadline? What you are seeing is either our subconscious never stopping for a rest, or our own volition working actively and more openly to achieve. The challenge you may be facing in managing a team of diverse talent, experience, and confidence is that you can't be sure who on your team succeeds unintentionally and who is truly achieving on their intent. You have probably seen some of the scads of research that shows that when our minds create a vision or a target for accomplishment, both our conscious and subconscious minds go to work to figure out how to accomplish the task. I won't go into the details about why this works, but I do challenge you to ask yourself, how well do you manage your team's focus on visionary potential? You must put in place management processes that allow both ends of the intention spectrum to succeed. One of the processes through which we facilitate management and sales teams is called the Stretch 100, a stretch strategy and innovation process focused on getting individual sales producers to create far more aggressive plans for growth after hearing of the best practices from within their team and industry, as well as the insights of top customers in management. I am fascinated and gratified when I come back approximately 100 days later, part of the reasoning behind the name Stretch 100, and hear of the progress each participant has made. I have been shocked to see how many participants have reached 3-year objectives in just 3 months. Granted, this isn't possible in business with earning caps, but in industries like finance, commercial real estate, commodities like chemicals, or B2B businesses like software and consulting, it is quite possible for sales producers to have quantum leaps in short order. The key is a clear strategy and aggressive amounts of innovation. Again, I make every president and sales manager we work with promise me and the team directly that their new stretch goals will not become their new quota. You must remember one of the reasons sales producers sandbag and just barely reach their quota is that most of those in management look at sales producers just as the outdated economist looked at labor, as an expendable resource whose productivity should be ratcheted up to the maximum potential with little concern for the psychology and spirit of the individual. I make the leadership promise the sales producers that they are allowed to fail when it comes to stretch goals they've set. The fact is that many do fail, and they fail miserably, but most often, even for those who miss their targets in a big way, still made significant improvements in how they did their work, and even more importantly, they increased their expected production. What matters most to the top leader? Has the top leader of your company consistently communicated all of the following? The priority of significant growth and how everyone can contribute to accelerating the company's progress toward aggressive growth goals, the power, influence, and importance of the sales team's efforts and input regarding bringing on larger and higher quality customers, and how sales can contribute in other ways that will help to grow profits and revenues. That his door is always open for anyone who has important insights on how we could grow sales. That she is eager to become personally involved with helping to close large deals or speak to other C-level executives with prospective new business in phone calls or meetings or whatever he or she can reasonably contribute to the effort to grow sales. That sales is a critical function of the company, as critical as any part of the company. Have you noticed how frequently the titular leaders of companies come from accounting, engineering, product development, or some other non-sales related function within a company? As a result, these leaders tend to gravitate toward the areas with which they are most comfortable and familiar. When you see communication from the top with the sales team become infrequent, you will soon see a sales team begin to feel like the black sheep of the corporate family. Perhaps you've experienced even more antagonistic environments for sales, where they may be viewed as the overpaid lollygaggers who golf and goof off as much as they may or may not work. Or perhaps you've experienced situations in which sales is in what seems to be the perpetual battle with marketing, production, or some other facet of the company. Sales sees the other groups as not listening to what the customers are demanding, and the other stakeholders in the company see sales as the whiny complainers that are never happy with the deliverables or directives. When the titular head of the business has little to say about sales growth objectives or sales in general, many will sense that sales is a lower priority and thus work to produce accordingly. To tap the fuller sales growth potential, it is imperative that the top leader communicates the importance of sales growth and exhorts the entire team accordingly. Many a sales turnaround makes it or breaks it based on the involvement of the business's top leader and his or her focus on new sales growth and the sales team. Here are some of the best practices of top echelon executives who value and extol sales as part of an aggressive growth focus, going on key account calls and priority selling opportunities, being involved in recognizing and delivering incentives with the sales team, listening to the sales team for input on how to improve issues with the company and within the selling process and sales support. Parachuting in for the National Sales Convention once a year doesn't do it. A frequent best practice of presidents is calling every single salesperson in private one-on-one calls to ask specific questions about how the president and the company can better serve the sales team so that they can accelerate the growth of the company. Some of the best leaders I have worked with, including presidents, COOs, and CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, have a minimum number of meetings with top customers with a chief focus being on retaining and growing the account. One founder/CEO of one of the fastest growing Fortune 500 companies of all time made it a point to meet with every top 20% customer and every single employee and location at least once a year. Although it filled much of his calendar, he said that this time with his team, and especially the sales producers, was some of his most important work with the highest ROI. When the board hires the next CEO. When the board of directors evaluates candidates for CEO or president, a top concern of theirs should be the involvement the future leader plans to have with the sales team, customers, and prospects, as well as his or her sales savvy. A leader that sees selling as something that is beneath him isn't a leader at all and will probably be the antagonist of growth potential.